Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the debut record from Curse of Cain, self-titled Curse of Cain, out May 12th on Atomic Fire Records. This album has 9 tracks, 42 minutes in length, and they are a Swedish metal band. Before you press play on this record, you have to understand that this is a concept album surrounding the story of Cain, but the story of Cain taking him into the year 2076, so a very futuristic and perhaps apocalyptic view of where he currently is as far as his path, as far as his own journey is concerned. This is an important element. Understanding that concept, understanding where they're going with the story, allows you to better understand, better grasp, not just the lyrical content, but the overall sound, the soundscape that comes with it, and definitely the overall atmosphere that this record gives. Now, once you get into the design, I feel like that's perhaps the weakest spot on this album. It's an album that doesn't have a sense of continuity from song to song, at least not uninterrupted. It feels like there's a lot of stop and go. It feels like there's snapshots of where you are in the story of Cain, but not necessarily connecting those snapshots in order for you to have more of a continuous journey from start to end. The album by nature, in terms of its sound, is very eclectic. So that eclectic nature of the record plays into the structure as well. The first half of the album feels a lot more chaotic. It feels a lot more divided from track to track. You start to see a little bit more consistency, a little bit more balance towards the last third of the record. I honestly feel like the album, from a concept point of view, would have come across a lot better if these songs found a way of connecting with one another. And I'm not suggesting adding interludes to this record, but the way the album starts, for example, with the opening song having an intro, the intro that sets the table for the overall story, maybe using those intros and outros as a way of connecting the tracks would have made the overall experience a lot better in terms of understanding where you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. You honestly have to paint a vivid picture of what the overall story is, but also of the individual chapters and how they connect with one another when you're putting together a concept record. As far as the sound is concerned, this is a very futuristic sounding album, but 2076 is in the future, so the record represents that state of mind. The way they created the futuristic sound of this album was through electronic elements and synths. I'm normally not a fan of using those elements ad nauseum to the point where they just completely cover up the drums and guitars and sometimes even vocals, and they become the driving force on each and every single song. I'm glad to say that that's not the case with this record. They do play an important role, and I would say that their first role on this album is to create that futuristic atmosphere, not just in the sound, but also in the impact that that same sound has in the lyrical content. The second aspect of that electronic sound, those synthesizers on this record, is that in some songs they are driving the experience of the tracks, but in some songs they're more of a layer. They drop down into the second seat, or into the back seat I should say, allowing the guitars and drums to still be the predominant factors that drive the experience of the tracks. This ebb and flow in terms of when you push them forward and when you move them back becomes extremely important for this album to not lose the metal side of their sound, because they are a band that doesn't have necessarily a signature sound. Perhaps the signature is not having a signature, because this album sound-wise is very eclectic. It's very diverse. Melodic death metal, gothic, doom elements, hard rock, electronic elements. I mean, there's just so much to digest, and you're going to see that diversity not just in the sound, but then also in the vocals that follows. So it's an album that really takes you on a roller coaster ride from track to track, because it's just always giving you a different look and a different feel. Using the electronic elements and the synthesizers as the red line that connects every single song is important. Not allowing that red line to be always with the same thickness, it's even more important. I think it allows this album to have a lot more life, a lot more durability. It expands the playability of the record beyond listening to the album once or twice. It definitely creates better functions within the songs and allows this album to have a great soundscape that's extremely well defined, but not boring and repetitive. Now, when it comes to the guitars and drums on this album, I really enjoyed the guitar sound and I enjoy the execution, sometimes blending in with the keyboards and the electronic elements, creating a very melodic wall of sound, sometimes breaking away from that, infusing some more heaviness, some more thickness. The aspect of the guitars that I wasn't a huge fan of on this record were the solos. Not that they weren't good. I just felt like a little bit disconnected from what the song was calling for, either from a melodic point of view, from an atmospheric point of view, or even from an overall essence point of view. A lot of the times the solos were good, they just didn't really add value to the way the song was coming along and the way the song is put together. Understanding and creating solos that are more organic to the nature of the song definitely increases the playability and the quality of the tracks themselves. It's not just about creating a great solo, it's about creating a great solo that makes the song feel complete and not necessarily something that's inserted into a track and feels somewhat out of place, which was more often than not the case here. Now, as far as the drums are concerned, they're not super heavy throughout this album. Songs that have a little bit more bite, the drums pick up that pace or pick up that weight and match it up with the thickness of the guitars to create a different kind of wall of sound. But overall, the drums are balanced throughout the entire record, grounding the album, giving a sense of foundation through this record, and allowing the album to have some sort of weight on the back end and not levitate all the time with all the melodic elements that are coming in from the synthesizers, from the electronic elements, or even from the guitars themselves. So they were an important aspect of the album in terms of giving some more substance and allowing this record to not just feel super thin all around. Vocally, I loved it. I loved it for two reasons. One, I love the diversity of approach. If you have a concept record, you have to change your style, your approach, your delivery from song to song depending on what the story calls for, the specific story within that track. That's exactly what they did here. The second aspect of the vocals that I really enjoy is that it didn't matter if they were more electronic, it didn't matter if they were heavier with harsh vocals, or if they were clean. The clean vocals are my favorite of them all, but it didn't really matter which style or which approach was used. They always sounded great within the songs. They always felt so natural within the existence of the songs, and the overall tonality of the vocals is really phenomenal. Definitely one of the highlights of this entire album. When you look at this record, when you look at this album as a debut record, as a concept record with a very unique concept idea, it's an album that gets better with the more times that you're listening to. The first couple of times I played this record, I wasn't a fan, because my favorite songs of the album come at the end of the record. And by the time I got to the end of the record, I was a little bit disconnected and I didn't really feel the impact and the power that those songs really have. So it's an album that takes plays. You have to give it time, you have to play it in order to really absorb it, in order to really get into it. Once you get into it, you're going to find quality within. It's a record that, in my opinion, says more about what the future of this band can be than what the present currently is. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with The Mark. This is the opening track on the record. The intro of this track could have been taken away from the track, kept within the track. I think taken away would have made sense from a playlist Spotify point of view, because once the song would play, you would get straight into it. The intro works in the concept of the album because it sets the table for the story. And that's an important starting point for any record, specifically for a concept album. The electronic sound adds melody and heaviness to the overall experience. It really creates a more textured sound all around. There are moments where the track is very light, very well defined, and then there's moments where there's more heaviness, where there's more power. This creates a dynamic experience, this creates ebbs and flows. Now, it's not just a song that has those ebbs and flows musically, because it has the same sort of ebbs and flows vocally, adding the harsh vocals in order to create a little bit more thickness, in order to create a little bit more heaviness, and then infusing some clean vocals in order to strip the song down. It closes as it starts. It's a song that kind of lives within a bubble of itself, but it goes full circle, an important element. Next we have The Ground. Now this is more an electronic track all around, a track that depends more on those electronic elements to drive the experience of the song. Not just there to create melody, not just there to create atmosphere, but rather really drive this song home. It's a more modern metal track with a lot of electronic elements. That's how this song is put together. Opening with a chorus is genius, because the chorus is simple, easy, and memorable. And when you start off the song with a chorus, you're immediately putting that on the back of the mind of the listener. So the next time that it comes around, you already feel like you've heard it more than just once. It becomes memorable, it becomes hooky, it becomes catchy, and therefore that idea, that feel, that vibe transports itself to the entire song. It's just a very memorable song all around. Memorable vocally, memorable musically, vocally really strong, because It has a lot of different consistencies to it. It creates a different experience to it, but a very calm experience at times. So I love how this song engages the listeners. The simplicity of the track is really what makes this song work, both musically and vocally, and that is a winning formula for a song like The Ground. Last but not least, Dead and Buried. Now this is more of a guitar-driven song. The melody that comes from the guitars and from the keyboards definitely adds a sorrow note to how this track comes across. A track that allows you to have a very stripped down experience, pushing the vocals and the overall melody of the sound forward, but allowing the vocals, because of that stripped down nature, to really be in the forefront, creating an amazing atmosphere. Then using the keys and reinforcing those melodies at times allows the sound to get bigger. So you go from stripped down moments where the vocals are in the forefront to moments where the sound becomes a little bit more robust, a little bit more texture. The vocals are still in the forefront, but they're not pushing the song forward. Now the sound is pushing the song forward. The vocals are just coming by default with it. This allows the track to have a nice movement up and down as you go along with it, but it also allows the song to stay connected because the elements are quite the same. You're just changing the volume on them as you're moving from the verses into the chorus. The chorus also sounds larger than life. It has great backing vocals, it has choirs, it has layers, it just feels thick, it just feels big, it feels like there's a million voices. So when you add this movement, when you add the overall vibe that the song gives you, and then you hit up with a chorus like this, a very bombastic chorus musically, but then over the top vocally, it's very difficult to walk away from a song like this not remembering it. Great track, great dynamic, great overall construction. This is it, Curse of Cain with their self-titled debut record, Curse of Cain, out May 12 on Atomic Fire Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles, use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.